have you been, my blue-eyed son? And where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled on the side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled on 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. And it's a hard, and it's a hard, it's a hard, and it's a hard, and it's a hard rains are gonna fall. Oh, what did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my darling young one? I heard the sound of a thunder that roared out a warning. Heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. I heard 100 drummers whose hands were ablazing. I heard 10,000 whispering and nobody listening. I heard one person starve, I heard many people laughing. I heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. I heard the sound of a clown who cried in the alley. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, and it's a hard, and it's a hard rains are gonna fall. Oh, who did you meet, my blue-eyed son? Who did you meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man who walked a black dog. I met a young woman, her body was burning. I met a young girl, she gave me a rainbow. I met one man who was wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded in hatred. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, and it's a hard, it's a hard rains are gonna fall. On raining, levee's gonna break, and the water gonna come in, and we'll have no place to stay. Well, all last night I sat on the levee and moaned. Well, all last night I sat on the levee and moaned, thinking about my baby and my happy home. If it keeps on raining, levee's gonna break. On raining, levee's gonna break, and all these people have no place to stay. Now look here, mama, what am I to do? Now look here, mama, what am I to do? I ain't got no both night and day. I worked so hard to keep the water away. Well, I had a woman, she wouldn't do for me. Yeah, I had a woman, she wouldn't do for me. Well, I'm going back to my used to be. Oh, mean old levee taught me to weep and moan. It's a mean old levee taught me to weep and moan. Told me to leave my baby and my happy home. Long as I remember, the rain been coming down, clouds of mystery pouring, confusion on the ground. Good men through the ages, trying to find the sun. And I wonder, still I wonder, who'll stop the rain? I went down Virginia, seeking shelter from the storm. Caught up in the fable, I watched the tower grow. 5-year plans and new deals, wrapped in golden chains. And I wonder, still I wonder, who'll stop the rain? Heard the singers playing, how we cheered for more. The crowd had rushed together, trying to keep warm. Still the rain kept pouring, falling on my ears. And I wonder, still I wonder, who'll stop the rain?
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour. The weather started getting rough, the tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost, the minnow would be lost. The ship's aground on the shore of this uncharted desert isle, with Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire and his wife, the movie star, the professor and Mary Ann, here on Gilligan's Isle.
Good morning. Good morning. We ring this bell 3 times. The first is to call us into conversation among those whom we have, with whom we have history. Sometimes a history that's in need of our attention and care. We invoke the people of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and honor our forebears who preceded us here and once occupied the land most of us now call home. The second bell calls us into relationship with ourselves and one another, that we learn to appreciate the broad diversity of which we are just a part, to summon a humility and adopt a commitment to the mutuality which leads to harmony in a complex and multicultural world. And the third calls us into relationship with our children and our children's children, out to the seventh generation, helping us to realize that what we do now, or fail to do, will be felt by those who come after us.
Good morning. So glad to have you with us both here in Cole Hall and throughout the many points of the constellation that is Mission Peak from wherever you hail. This morning is a special day. It is the celebration of our water communion, a service that brings us together to transcend differences and separateness. We've been celebrating water communion here at Mission Peak for some time, as I understand. Shortly after your formation in the early 90s. How many people have been to water communion here before? Ooh. How many people have been to water communion somewhere else before? All right. Well, you might remember it, as I did for many years, in the vernacular of where our family went on summer vacation. And I'm not sure about here, but that approach fell out of favor in other places over the last couple decades because it seemed to unconsciously and unintendedly call attention to the class divide between those who nonchalantly threw down the big bucks to go on a weekend trip to gather glacier water from the Himalayas, and those who speculated about where their tap water might come from. But there was another lesser known reason, and that is because that approach was starting to veer significantly away from the very specific intentions of the original water communion service. The first ever water communion ceremony was held on May 17th, 1980 in East Lansing, Michigan. It was the opening ceremony for the Women and Religion Continental Convocation. The ceremony was created by Carolyn McDade, who you might know wrote Spirit of Life, and Lucille Shuck Longview. And the ceremony was called Like Rivers to the Sea. In the conference that invited the women to come, the women were asked to bring a small container of water symbolizing some life-giving element, some source of wisdom or purpose that they had inherited that had been poured into them through the years from the people who raised them. Now, this idea was to ask every woman to bring a few drops of their solace and their strength so that they could share that with their sisters who needed a little sustenance to help them feel understood and welcomed and home. The unspoken, but well-known to them truth was that some of the women there were not feeling at home in the world, nor in the world of Unitarian Universalism. Now, women throughout history have experienced systemic oppression in a variety of cultures, pretty much since history was recorded. This repression limited their opportunities, refused to recognize their ambition or potential, and provided them with just a fraction of the resources that were available to men who subordinated their power through the systems. It's one of the reasons why many families, particularly families that included educated women, started to gravitate toward Unitarian Universalism over the years. Now, as UUs, we like to hear narratives where Unitarian Universalism is lauded as a progressive faith, how it challenged many cultural or religious practices that discriminated against people based on race or theology, or how it historically fought for the advance of education or medicine or fair working conditions, etc. And we like to hear about how our tradition helped progress the work of gender discrimination, which is certainly notable in our history. But many women who were coming to UUism after the merger in 1961 were beginning to ask hard questions. Why are there so few women elected to political office in government? And why are so few in prominent positions in corporate America? And why were women being paid, on average, at that time, 40% less for doing the exact same job as a man? And then these women began coming to Unitarian Universalism and began asking questions about us and our approach to patriarchy. At the time of the merger, it was nearly impossible, this is 1961, nearly impossible to see a woman in any of our 1,000 pulpits across the country, or in significant leadership positions at the UUA. In fact, it was nearly impossible to see women anywhere, even in our principles and purposes. Let me give you a gist of what our original principles and purposes said. They used phrases like love of God and the love of man, the dignity of man, building a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, the importance of fellowship, encouraging cooperation with men of goodwill. Now, this was starting to seem unacceptable to more and more women, and such women who'd had enough. One such woman who'd had enough was someone by the name of Rosemary Matson. I had the great pleasure of having Rosemary Matson as a member of my congregation when I served the Monterey community some years ago. And I know she would be very pleased if I shared a little bit of her herstory, as she calls it. In 1964, Rosemary Matson accepted the position as Associate for Development and Communications to Josiah Bartlett, the president of Star King School for the Ministry. She had been married for many years to the minister of the San Francisco congregation, and so she knew what the ministry was like, and she understood the patriarchy as part of our system. But almost immediately, she got firsthand accounts streaming in to Star King from the women who had requested applications for enrollment that were never sent out, or that they had received back their submitted applications unopened. She noticed that most women, whether they were congregational leaders or major donors or speakers at General Assembly, or many of the letters that she sent out from Star King, were addressed to a woman in her husband's name, i.e. Mrs. Bob West. When she gathered an early contingent of women to talk about women in ministry, they went and met on the East Coast at one of our foremost Unitarian seminaries, Harvard Divinity School. But they discovered they had to go from the classroom up either 2 floors or 2 buildings over to find a women's bathroom. That's how foundational and systematic patriarchy was. She went back to Star King and fought to launch the Center for Women's Studies on campus. She helped hire female professors at the school. She helped elect female members to the board of trustees. And her efforts helped to increase the women enrolled at this school in the 14 years that she was there by 40%. She watched as women serving as ministers in congregation went from under 1% to over 10%. After 14 years and a change of Star King School presidents, she was fired from the school in 1977 for, in her words, being too uppity about women's advancement. She helped publish the UU curriculum, such as Cakes for the Queen of Heaven and Rise Up and Call Her Name, which educated about feminine images of the divine. She also published her own curriculum, Unraveling the Gender Knot. And she was well known for her quote, "We don't want a bigger slice of the pie. It's still a patriarchal pie. We want a new recipe." Rosemary is one of the key reasons why Starr King School was the first major seminary in the country to hire a woman as president, and why today we have a woman serving as president of the UUA, and why today we have more ministers serving our congregations that are women than are men. In 2011, Starr King School for the Ministry invited Rosemary back to award her an honorary doctorate. She is smiling down upon us, but she is also reminding us to hold true and remember the primary purpose of the first ever water communion ceremony, which she helped to organize, which was to provide solace and strength for women who needed one another during times when they were weary from fighting the patriarchal oppression. It was a ceremony that fed and literally watered their souls and gave them vision until the day where the brightest within us all could rise and shine brightly.
Let us join together in bringing our unique voices together to recite these words which call us together as a community with Unitarian Universalists all across the globe. Please join me. We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are all one family. Take good care of the earth because it is our home, to live lives full of goodness and love, because that is how we will be becoming the best people we can be.
Good morning. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Colleen Arnold. My pronouns are she, her, or they, and I'm a member of the board. We're so glad you joined us this morning. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are all coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm and promote the inherent worth of every person. Together, we see our job is to love the hate out of this world, heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and to be the change we'd like to see in the world. We use chat in Zoom or our book near the welcome table to share joys and concerns, personal milestones of importance, which will be read aloud in the service. Maybe you're here for the first time. We've been reaching out and asking people to bring their friends because we think the world, especially now, needs some friendly places to gather and find encouragement and hope. We have social hour after the service, and today we're actually going to have a picnic and eat lunch together, where we get to visit with one another. And on Zoom, we do it in breakout rooms or on the patio. The worship host will give you more information about this immediately after the service. In the meantime, we put a link to our weekly newsletter in the chat so you can see all the events coming up. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. We also put our welcome email, welcome@mpuuc.org, to request a newsletter or other information be sent to you. There's a few things we'd like to call your attention to today. Attendees should be masked inside and outside of Cole Hall during the service, preferably with N95 or KN95 masks. We have those masks available at the welcome table in the back, and please help yourself. Eating and drinking are only allowed outside. The boutique and auction. Boutique will be November 5th, so please clear that on your calendar. We do need help with the boutique. Week on the Peak has links for how you can help and how you can donate items. Today, after the service, we're having a picnic gathering, and we'd like to have it outdoors, but we're going to have to see how the weather holds out. There's more information on the bulletin board to your left and in this Week on the Peak, and please silence your electronic devices. If you hear or see something in this morning's service that inspires you or makes you laugh or brings you hope, please tweet it or share it on social media or just tell a friend. We are trying to start a wave of love and justice with every gathering. I'd like to take a moment to speak on behalf of the Board of Mission Peak UU congregation. We want to express our deep gratitude to our Zoom hosts and video producers, Steve Walcave, Graham Bell, Eric Alm, and David Gibbons, as well as support person Melissa Holmes and remote monitor Joanne Schreiner. Because you make a very complicated job look so simple and seamless, it's easy for all of us to lose track of exactly how difficult a job it is. We recognize the preparation required, the need to stay focused on the technical part of Zoomcasting, while the rest of us are focused on the service. Mission Peak UU has received a lot of positive feedback and gratitude for how our services are so available and accessible online, and we sincerely pass those thanks on to you. We can only provide a hybrid worship service because of the work you do, and the whole of Mission Peak UU owes you a large debt of gratitude for it. And I have one more thing. We need to say happy birthday to our minister. Happy birthday, Greg. We have candles for you because it's a big one, so in case if you were trying to hide how old you are this birthday, too bad. So Suzette has a 6 and an O. They go in that order. Okay, are we gonna sing? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Greg. Happy birthday to you. He's in denial. That's why he's making me blow it. Okay, I'll take these. All right, thanks for joining us.
Someone told me long ago, so call before the storm. I know it's been coming for some time. It's over, so they say. The rain, a sunny day. I know, shining down like water. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down, so
Universalist Olympia Brown was the first woman to be ordained by a denomination in 1863. She persisted despite being rejected at countless seminaries and was finally accepted to the Theological School of St. Lawrence University. She faced opposition from many sides, including her fellow students and the wives of faculty. After being refused ordination at her seminary, which was performed only for the men students, she persisted, and finally the Universalist Council agreed to ordain her. She went on to serve several congregations and became active in the fight for women's suffrage. Other women were starting to become ministers. The book Prophetic Sisterhood tells a story of Unitarian women called the Iowa Sisterhood, who in the late 19th century worked in frontier pulpits for low pay and under undesirable conditions, where most men would not accept a call. They broke through the boundaries of gender to ordained ministry and of the general lack of support of their efforts by either of the congregations or the denomination. The General Superintendent of the Universalist Church wrote in 1935 of, quote, a tremendous prejudice against women ministers. At the present time, I find it is practically impossible to get any woman minister a hearing for any position at a salary whatsoever, unquote. By the late 1950s, there were no women settled as parish ministers among the Unitarians. And in 1959 to 1960, only 3 women were served Universalist parishes. So for women ministers, it's sort of a bleak time. In general, at that time, there was a wall of patriarchy that existed in religion as well as in other professions where the duties performed required exercising power and authority. When Rosemary Matson, who Reverend Greg mentioned, was fired from Starr King's School for the ministry, she became co-chair of the Continental Committee of Women and Religion. She joined forces with women all throughout the denomination to help pass a resolution at General Assembly to advance women's standing in our denomination and in society at large. They spent 10 years sowing the seeds and laying the groundwork for the larger conversation. In 1977, they finally put a resolution before the General Assembly. In part, here's what it said. Whereas a principle of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to affirm and promote the supreme worth and dignity of every human being, and whereas models of human relationships rising out of religious myths, historical precedent, and teaching from church still result in women everywhere being overlooked and undervalued. And whereas children, youth, and adults internalize these cultural models in ways that limit their sense of self-worth and dignity. Therefore, be it resolved that the 1977 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association calls upon all Unitarian Universalists to examine carefully their own religious beliefs regarding gender role stereotypes and encourage our administrative officers, staff, religious leaders, UU theological schools, that's a dig at Starr King, directors of related organizations, and planners of conferences such as this to make every effort to A, put traditional assumptions and language in perspective, and B, avoid sexist assumptions and language. The resolution passed unanimously. It should be noted that All this was done at the exact time when women across the country were trying to pass and enact the Equal Rights Amendment through Congress. One of the glaring and embarrassing tragedies of our country's history is that their efforts failed. Although the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution passed the Senate and the House and was signed by the President, it failed to be ratified by enough state legislators to take effect. So it is even more notable that within UUism, we were able to summon a political willingness to change things for women in the UU world. Some of you probably remember our interim minister, the Reverend Joy Atkinson. She was one of the early pioneers who took a brave step of going to seminary in the early 1970s. Reverend Joy was at the beginning of a wave that increased the percentage of UU women ministers. By 1978, our numbers had risen to 6%, and we got our first woman, Sandra Karen, elected to the position of UUA moderator. Moderator is the person who presides over General Assembly and over UUA Board of Trustee meetings. By 1985, the percentage of women exploded to 25%. Percentage of women clergy, that is, exploded to 25%. Instead, it was largely due to the influence and pressure from women that our principles and purposes, fully revised in 1984 to the words "without sexist language" that we currently know. And again, it was the political will of this contingent that led in 1993 to our hymnal being revised with gender-inclusive language. By the time I entered seminary, the percentage of women ministers was a little over 50%. Today, it is 60%. As much progress as this represented, we need to keep in mind that it was still a rarity among some religious denominations. I remember when I was leaving IBM to go to seminary in the year 2000, I told one of my colleagues that I was planning to become a minister. Surprised, he asked me, "Do they allow girls to do that?" I just looked at him incredulously, wondering where he ever got the idea that women couldn't become ministers.
Where did you ever get the idea that you can't do the impossible? We are here in part to make a way from no way. We are able to do that because we gather for more than ourselves. We gather to make sure that the ministries we need and the ones that we create to provide diversity and inclusivity infuse worth and dignity into our children, our youth, our programs of learning, and spill out into our ministries into the community. We are in place to meet the needs of others and bring about the future that we can make together. You can help make this happen. If you are in Cole Hall, you can come forward and put your money in one of those baskets. Or if you are online, you can send a check into Mission Peak UU congregation at the address on the screen. You can also use various bill pay options on your check. And if you would like to slip me $100 as you come through for water communion, that will not be denied either. Please know that your support adds to the love and liberation of our members, friends, and staff, and becomes part of our mission to bring love and justice out into the world. As you consider your contributions, we ask you to imagine how love, learning, and leadership might bring about a transformational theology of our time.
Our blessings and burdens are woven together. For the burden of continually re-entering, reinvesting, and recommitting to a community, there's a blessing of having people know, understand, and love us in the fullness of these complicated times. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing might lessen the weight of your burden or magnify the joy, please write it briefly now in the chat if you're online. Once you've done that, you find another, for those who are present in Cole Hall, you're invited to share a joy or concern in our book, then come forward and place another flower. This is if your seed is personal. You can also send an email to Reverend Greg for a follow-up conversation.
Put your makeup on, get your nails done, curl your hair, run the extra mile, keep it slim so they like you. Do they like you? Get your sexy on, don't be shy, girl, take it off. This is what you want to belong, so they like you. Do they like you? You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to give it all away. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. You don't have to change a single thing. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. Get your shopping on at the mall, max your credit cards. You don't have to choose, buy it all, so they like you. Do they like you? Wait a second, why should you care what they think of you when you're all alone by yourself? Do you like you? Do you like you? You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to give it all away. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. You don't have to change a single thing. You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to bend until you break. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. You don't have to change a single thing. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, try, try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. No, you don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. No. Try so hard. You don't have to give it all away. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. You don't have to change a single thing. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. Take your makeup off, let your hair down, take a breath, look into the mirror at yourself. Don't you like you? 'cause I like you.
These are the joys and concerns that are alive in our hearts today. For all of these joys, both spoken and unspoken, the ones that remain in the silent sanctuary of our heart, we make a promise to ourselves and to one another to keep our hearts, our minds, our arms, and our doors open. Things have changed. Like, for instance, now the microphone is on. Now, 60% of UU ministers in our denomination are women. Some of them now lead our largest congregations. Our UUA president is a woman, but work is still greatly needed for women and ensuring basic rights like equal pay, equal access to education in many parts of the world, and simple sovereignty around fundamental healthcare issues and decisions about a woman's body. But there are many more issues that need attention as well, and not all of them have their own water communion ceremony to promote them. Widening the Circle of Concern was a book published recently by the Commission on Institutional Change to help us see the myriad of ways that many marginalized identities are still struggling and seeking basic equal rights and access to resources and care and support within the larger society of Unitarian Universalism. As a congregation, our engagement in the denominational and global transformation toward justice matters. As with women's rights, justice for any issue of marginalization requires awareness and education and leadership and coalition building and ongoing support. Because the work of transformation takes time, we also must find ways to support those people in the midst of the struggle, to help remind them that they are not alone, that they have support, that they have company and solace and friends. I'd like to name for you just a few of the passions for justice and fairness that are alive in this very congregation right now and in our surrounding areas. Supporting the right to vote. Addressing the threats of democracy in our country. Ensuring women can exercise sovereignty over their own bodies. Protecting LGBTQ rights. Helping accompany refugees from war-torn countries as they seek safety for themselves and their families. Understanding and accommodating the unhoused. Advocating for those whose lives and families have been touched by mental illness or addiction. Addressing continued systemic oppression of Black, brown, and Indigenous peoples. Rehabilitation and reintegration of those who have been previously incarcerated, and recognizing the unique variations of neurodiverse communities and people. You can probably think of other passions that I skipped over in this very short list. But in addition, activists around the world have identified some of the most prominent threats to society at large that are coming in the next 20 years. Some of the things that may not even be on our radar, such as world poverty, world hunger, access to safe water, environmental devastation, and community relocation due to climate change, international political stability and access to nuclear weaponry, technological development beyond ethical parameters, especially within the realm of artificial intelligence, and choices of how we explore, settle, and develop technology in space. When I was looking at this website, I was just blown away that some of these things I hadn't even thought about setting up communities in space that could be territorial and be weaponized. We could also ask ourselves, how can Unitarian Universalism continue to make a difference in these expanding areas as we have with other areas in the past? What promises would we need to make, and to what would we need to turn to in order to help us be true to that? Think about the women who gathered in 1980 at the original water communion ceremony, and think about what they were doing. They were gathering to give one another solace and support and company amidst the hard work that they were being asked to do. They were asked to celebrate their successes and mourn their losses, become educated about the struggles of the disenfranchised populations that they didn't even know about, learn to center marginalized perspectives and welcome wisdom from different ideas, summon a shift from a me-focused society to a we-focused society, join together into coalitions of public witness, share resources and channel them strategically to advance worthy causes, and be part of social networks that extend care to others, gathering with the same hope, in other places, so that we can work together with other agencies. Clearly, we can't do it all, and the number of things needed can feel a little overwhelming. So it is good to remember the words of Unitarian Edward Everett Hale, who said, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do."
We're coming to the edge, running on the water, coming through the fog, your sons and daughters.
Let the river run, let all the dreamers wake the nation on the New Jerusalem. The streets that lead them, and the sirens call them on with a song. It's asking for the taking, trembling, shaking. Oh, my heart is aching. We're coming to the edge, running on the water, coming through the fog, your sons and daughters. The great and small stand on a star and raise a trail of desire through the darkening dawn. It's asking for the taking. Come run with me now, the sky is the color of blue you've never even seen in the eyes of your love. My heart is aching. We're coming to the edge, running on the water, coming through the fog, your sons and daughters. It's asking for the taking, trembling, shaking. water coming through the bog, your sons and daughters. Let the river run, let all the dreamers wake the nation. Come back to Jerusalem.
The first water ritual was conceived in 1980 by a half a dozen women and shared with 100 more who gathered in East Lansing, Michigan, from all over North America. Coming Home Like Rivers to the Sea was both the name of the convocation and the title of the worship. Here's what Lucille Shuck Longview and Carolyn McDade would later say about the significance of the service. The water communion ceremony, where each woman brought forth a little water and spoke of its power and significance to them, became a central part of the religious service. It broke tradition in significant ways. First, it was created by lay women, women who had long been silent in the pews. It helped them claim their power. The ritual space between and among each woman present was also made sacred by each woman showing up. We gathered to worship in a way authentic and liberating to us, not as a church, but in a semicircle around a large common earthen bowl. It was a ritual of women's being connected by a universal symbol, water, and a ritual of women being connected to the totality of life. Here are the words from the actual ritual shared by Carolyn McDade. Making our way like rivers from places distant and near, we came together to give shape to a new spirituality. Here we celebrate a theology that calls women to summon our own strength rather than to give our strength to support others. Here we celebrate a theology that calls women to action rather than passivity, that calls women to full expression rather than to meek acceptance. Recognizing that we must question every box, every definition, every assignment from authority outside our own being so that we can create and recreate ourselves, the rituals and symbols that give meaning to us. So we come together to question, to hear, to share, to speak, to inspire, and to celebrate through new rituals, knowing that our energy and our love are transforming. Celebrating now our connectedness, we choose water as a symbol of our empowerment. As rivers in the cycle release their waters and regain new beginnings, so do we cycle. For us as women, these beginnings are powerful, but not easy. But still we come to create and to celebrate and to live by the only spirituality worthy of our devotion. A spirituality that uplifts, empowers, and connects.
So we're going to celebrate this water communion ceremony in a similar way to the way it was originally celebrated. It may seem a little complicated, but so are all of the troubles in the world, and so we just have to meet that complication with our own. So we're going to ask you to think about two things. We're going to ask you, the first thing is, from where do you come that has filled you with a sense of purpose? And where could be a place, it could be a person, it could be a family, it could be a group, it could be a community. In a second, a slide will come up to show you some examples of what you might think about. So the first thing is to think about, from where do you draw your strength or your purpose or your value? The second thing is, what is that value? What is that purpose? Is it that you believe in justice? That you believe in education? That you believe in raising great children? That you believe in fairness at work? You believe in unions? Anything like that. So the slide will also show that. So we're going to give you about 3 minutes to think about, what is the place that you want to name, and what is the value that you then pass on in your life to the community that needs you. Does that make sense? Recognize that was the beautiful musical stylings of Shauna Pickett Gordon, for which we are always grateful. So we're going to do this by alternating between what Barbara shares from those people who are with us online and what you share here in Cole Hall by coming through from stage right to stage left. And I will hold up the microphone and pour the water, and you just need to share what you share. Does that make sense?
And online, they use the chat.
And online, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you. Online, please put your sharings in the chat, and Barbara will read those.
Right, from my almost 2 decades in an online community, I bring and keep the value of integrity.
From Drew Wilson, my family gave me a passion for progressive causes.
From my parents, Don and Kit McDonald, I have a passion and a commitment to equity and the ending of poverty.
David Gibbons shares from his family a commitment to kindness.
From my family, a commitment to curiosity and lifelong learning.
Chris Schreiner shares, the schools I attended and some teachers specifically gave the precious value of democracy.
From my children, I bring the value of finding awe.
We don't have any more, so keep going.
From my family and preserving the environment.
David Lefcourt shares from his family an interest and passion for kindness and curiosity.
From the benefit of many therapists in my own personal therapy and their wisdom, I've learned the value of sharing that in psychotherapy with others.
From John Porter, from my parents, a vision of the divine and appreciation of education.
I learned to value the environment from hiking and camping and all of that. And I am very interested in justice too.
From Joanne Schreiner, from family, perseverance.
From my hometown of Selma, California, where my eyes were first opened, and I learned to try to remain open to fresh truth and revelation.
From Lucy Richel to everyone, from my parents, a desire for connection and kindness.
My dad gave me the values of a very strong family and building community.
From Terry Parker King, from my dad, a commitment to love.
From my spiritual father, I got a commitment to unity, justice, and equality.
Go ahead. Don't have any more.
From my grandmother, the importance of building community for all.
From a friend in college who taught me to think about the things I was about to change before actually implementing change, and whether it actually is going to be something that's going to make improvement.
What I would share comes from people I met in Parks and Rec, a little bit from my parents, but also a big helping from the people that I knew in youth group who were a pretty strong community that taught me to love people through mistakes and to love myself when I make mistakes.
From my friends and family, a commitment to democracy and wealth equality from Paul Quinn. Late coming in.
May all the blessings that we pour into this community wash over us, and know that this place is here not just for any single person, but for the flourishing of people together, that we may cross-pollinate ideas and support, and that we may give one another strength as we turn those into reality. May that be our prayer today. May our promise ripple out into the world and make a difference for love and justice everywhere. Amen.
Low below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've done sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Please join me in these words of the chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, place a hand on your heart and one out into the world from whatever source came to you and announced the great message of love and justice in whatever form you carry May you bring it safely to its destination where it's needed. And may in the process you carry and cross the paths of people who uplift you, uphold you, and make the truth of what you have a reality in the world. May this be our blessing and our promise. Amen.